My name is Jean Brunet Ludwig, and I've been a Baba lover since around 1970. I'm not exactly sure of the date because I don't remember when I read Listen Humanity, which was the turning point in my life. But backing up a little bit, I'll tell you just a tiny bit about my background. I grew up in Montreal, and my father was a Protestant and my mother was a Catholic. And in those days, that was a big deal. That was considered a mixed marriage. Today, no one would even bat an eye because, it's even Christians and non-Christians are getting married and it's not a big deal. But anyways, my father had been brought up a very strict Protestant, but after he went to college, he more or less became an atheist and had no use for any ism. And he used to tease my mother because she was a practicing Catholic. And he had promised when he married her that he would bring up any children Catholic. So we were brought up, my brother and I, going to Catholic schools and going to Catholic church. And when I got to high school, it was an all-girls Catholic high school taught by Congregation Notre Dame nuns, who we called Mother. And we had an hour every morning of theology. And that was one of my favorite subjects, actually. And I remember when the concept of reincarnation was presented, which we were told in no uncertain terms that it was a no-no, and Holy Mother, the Church, didn't approve of that doctrine. We were not allowed to believe it. I thought it was fascinating, and I thought, well, that seems like a real possibility. And as I got to the higher grades and they got into more and more real important concepts in theology, I got more and more interested. But then when I finished school, I wasn't particularly interested anymore. And then I kind of just stopped going to church and stopped thinking about those things. And I got much more interested in psychic phenomena. And then I got interested in Edgar Cayce, and I read all those books. And all the books that came out at that time, Be Here Now, Autobiography of a Yogi, and Swami this one, and Yoga that one, and Guru so-and-so. I mean, I read them all, everything that I could get my hands on. And then I finally read Mehera, which was a book loaned to me by a neighbor, and that was Listen Humanity. And after reading all that previous stuff and doing a lot of different seminars and lectures and classes in Zen and in Taoism and this and that, Eastern philosophy, where I met my best friend Robin at the Unitarian Church. Then when I read Meher Baba, what he had to say, I knew instantly that he could say in one paragraph what Guru so-and-so and Swami so-and-so got the whole book never got to the point, but Baba would nail it. It was so concise and so clear. Only someone who really knew the truth could ever have written that. So that changed my life, and that's when I, became a Baba lover, I could say, somewhere in the 70s. So that's a little bit of background. Now I'm going to tell you my 3 Mehera stories. The first one takes place in 1981, when our entire family had planned to go to India for the first time. That was me, my husband Ian, and our 2 children. And just the week I was to leave, my 14-year-old son Brad came down with spinal meningitis, which was a very serious, could be life-threatening disease. And it was definitely meningitis because they did a spinal tap and it was diagnosed by a neurologist in the hospital. And the doctor said he had to be there on intravenous penicillin for 10 days, and they would be starting that immediately. And so our trip to India was canceled. And then what happened, so my son was admitted one evening, and the very next morning we went back to the hospital, my husband and I, to see him. And the doctor was quite amazed. He was like all better. He was bouncing off the bed. And the doctor said, well, he doesn't seem to be in any danger, but we have to keep him on penicillin for 10 days. But he had known that we were planning to go to India, and he said to me, if you want to go ahead to India, your husband can stay back because he's out of all danger. And I decided that I would go to India with our daughter, our 11-year-old daughter, Samantha. And James Cox got into the picture, where he would be very helpful, sending a car to pick me up in Bombay and taking me down to Ahmednagar, because I had never been before and I didn't know the ropes, and I was kind of nervous about that, but he smoothed the way. So I did go with our daughter, and as soon as I got to the PC, someone, and it might have been Debbie Nordine's, whoever the receptionist was, said, you know, Mehera prayed for Brad. And I thought, well, that's nice, but it didn't make much impression. And then a couple of days later, we went out to Mehera, and the first thing that Mani said to me was, you know, Mehera prayed for Brad. Now, Mehera knew about Brad because we had sent a telegram saying that our trip was canceled and the reason why. In those days, that's how you communicated with India. Telegrams. There was no internet, no email. So they knew, and so I thought, oh, that's nice, but went right over my head. And I met Mehera, and I didn't say one word. I didn't say thank you. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't say anything. Oh, the dumbbell that it was. Anyways, so now skip ahead 15 years later. And Samantha, our daughter, is on her way to work, on her first day of work of her new job. And she, I don't know how she called me, because there were no cell phones at that time, as far as I remember. Well, she didn't have a cell phone. But somehow she got in touch with me, called me, to say that she had lost her vision. And she had pulled over and she couldn't drive. So I immediately went and picked her up, and we took her to the eye doctor, and he said, this is not a vision problem, this is a neurological problem. So I want you to go see Dr. So-and-so, the neurologist, and, you know, have her examined. So we went directly from the optometrist to the neurologist, and when we got to his door of his office, I saw the name, which I don't remember, but Dr. So-and-so. I recognized the name, that was the same neurologist who had attended to Brad way back in 1981. And this is probably about 1994 now, something like that, or 95. And so when I went into his office, when he, you know, he saw me and he saw Samantha, I said to him, Doctor, we've met before. And he said, oh, when? And I said, you were my son's doctor way back in 1981 when he had meningitis. And with that, he buzzes his nurse to come in, and he says to her, go up in the attic and get the records for Brad Brunet. And I thought, well, that's pretty strange. What does he care about this old case? But sure enough, she comes back with this file folder, and he opens it up, and he looks, and he says, yeah, I see, yes, he had meningitis. Yes, he had viral meningitis. And we put him on penicillin, but that had no effect at all, because everyone knows antibiotics don't have any effect on viruses. They had done that because in case it was bacterial, they'd catch it right away. As soon as he said that, it hit me what had actually happened. Mehera had prayed for him. That's why the very next morning he was like all better. And I always thought it was the penicillin, but that had nothing to do with it. And I was so remorseful, because I realized how I had not had the graciousness and the sense to thank her profusely for probably saving my son's life. Not only he could have died, he also could have been physically impaired, he could have been deaf, he could have been brain damaged. I mean, the side effects from meningitis are horrible. And Mehera was gone already. She had passed away. She had passed on, gone to Baba. But I did thank her internally. But I finally, it took all those years for Baba to let me know what had really happened. So that's the end of that Mehera story. And I have two other ones. I finally got, I guess, forgiven by Mehera. My previous stories are, I went in 1986 with Ruth Rosen. The two of us went to India. And in those days, the women Mandali would come once a month to the Samadhi and have arti. And we were asked to garland Baba's picture, me and Ruth. And so all the women Mandali come in, and Ruth and I are at the head of the Samadhi where Baba's picture, big picture of Baba, and we're handed this beautiful garland, and all we have to do is drape it on the picture. So Ruth puts her corner on, and I put mine on, and hers slips off. I put my corner on, and hers slips off. And we go back and forth trying to garland Baba's picture. And we somehow couldn't do it. So this is maybe only a minute of doing this, you know, I don't know. It seemed like an eternity. And right in the very front, of course, is Mani and Mehera and the women Mandali. And Mehera goes like this. Such a simple thing. Oh, we almost died. But the next attempt, we got it. We finally did it. Two grown women couldn't do this basic, simple thing. Oh, so that was a big embarrassment. But then she must have forgiven me, because the next day we went out to Merazad and we were invited for tea, as, you know, women pilgrims were in those days. So Ruth and I went for tea in Baba's house. And the tea is poured for everybody all around, and then we're going to have a second cup. And the teapot is coming around, and when it gets to me, the teapot is empty. And I didn't say anything. I don't want to make a fuss about it. And Mehera sees that. And I'm at one end of the table, and she's at the other end of the table. She gets up, walks around to me, picks up the teapot, goes into the kitchen, gets tea, a refill, comes back and fills my cup. And I thought, she's forgiven me for being such a klutz the day before. I felt so happy that, you know, she even noticed, and then, you know, had the graciousness to fill my cup. So I felt vindicated, I guess you could say, or I'm not forgiven. And those are my Mehera stories. They're all connected with Mehera. I could tell one Ian story that's a Mani story. So I was a Baba lover, a committed Baba lover, but my husband Ian was still on the fence. And he was an engineer and scientific, and I had been involved with all kinds of things which he poo-pooed. And he didn't object to my going, but it wasn't for him. And then he ended up, the whole series of events, but he ended up at the center. He was asked to give a talk in Myrtle Beach on textile technology. And I guess this was about 1971. And apparently there had never been a textile technology talk before or since in Myrtle Beach. That was a one-time affair. And he was asked to give a talk. So we went and visited the center, because I knew from reading all these Baba books, by that time at the back they would always have centers of interest, you know, for Meher Baba. So I knew about the Myrtle Beach Center. And when I heard he was going to Myrtle Beach, I said, I want to go, which surprised him because he had been giving talks actually all over the world. I never went along with any of them, but anyway, so we got a babysitter and I went down. And we stayed at a Ramada because I didn't even know you could stay on the center. I didn't know anything. And I was taken around the center by Debbie Peterson, and then when it was over, taken back to Kitty's office. And Ian had come to pick me up to go back to the hotel. So we were sitting on one side of Kitty's desk, and she was on the other side, and she said to me, "Would you like to come back? It's Friday and we have slides." And I said, "Well, could Ian come?" And she didn't answer. She got up and she walked around the desk and she took his hands, Ian's hands, and she held them for like, I don't know, quite a few seconds. And then she said, "Oh, of course, dear Ian can come." But she didn't say that spontaneously. She somehow, I don't know what she was sensing, somehow she had to check it out to see if he was okay to come back. But anyways, so we both went back and we did watch the slides, and then Ian started to have interest in Mehera Baba. And then he had a lot of difficulties with his mother and other kinds of problems, family problems, and he decided he would paint Mehera Baba. He had never been an artist or painted anything, but he went out and bought paints and brushes and canvas, and he started painting Baba. And he thought they were pretty good, and I sort of said, okay, they're fine. Didn't make a big fuss. And then he did one that he was really proud of, and it was our daughter sitting under a tree, and a big yellow sun with Baba's face in it, and the rays coming down on our daughter. And he was pretty pleased with himself, and when I saw it, I didn't make any fuss at all. I didn't praise him. I said, yeah, so it's okay, and kind of just walked out. And he was very hurt, very disappointed that I didn't make a fuss about it. But he didn't say anything. So then a short while after that, he sent a donation to India, the first time to the trust. And back came an envelope, and it was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Ian Brunet, but Mrs. was scratched out, so it was obviously for Mr. And inside was a note, a thank you note, with a big yellow sun, with Baba's face in it, with the rays coming down. And she said, "Dear Ian, in the sunshine of beloved Baba's smile, then we thank you." Well, when he got that and he saw that sun and the rays, which were exactly the same as his picture, he was so, first of all, he couldn't believe that Mani could do that because she didn't know anything about his painting, but he was so happy. Well, maybe his wife didn't care about his painting, but Baba's sister did. And it just, it just pleased him to no end. And that was kind of the beginning of Baba drawing him in, which Baba eventually did, and he became a Baba lover and, attended all the meetings. We went to the center every year and became a full-fledged Baba lover. But that was one of the things that happened to him. Yeah. Another one was he had a terrible problem with his mother, who had Alzheimer's or some sort of horrible dementia, and he couldn't find a place that would take her permanently. And he drew a picture of Baba, and he put his heart and soul into it, and he really asked Baba for help. And the very next morning, he got a call, and they had a bed for her in the best place that we could ever have wanted, was like the perfect spot. And he was able to place her there until she passed away. So Baba thanked him, and yeah, and he noted those things, you can be sure. So, yeah. All these things are personal to the person, just kind of what you need, Yeah. So, those are my two Ian stories, I guess. There was one that's not my story, and I don't have all the details correctly, but when Brad went to India, finally got to India after several attempts, he finally went in 1992. He was taken to see the Must. Who's the Must? Muhammad, right? By Bao. And Muhammad said a lot of things to Brad that he were quite amazing about his father. Talked to, Ian had passed away then. He passed away in 85. So this is 92. And I don't remember those details, but I remember Brad being quite astonished that Muhammad could know things about his father that he said. And I should get those details from Brad, what he said. Something. Unless Bao told him things, told Muhammad. I don't know. Because Bao had come to visit us in 85, just before Ian passed away. Bao came in August and Ian died in September. So, yeah. And then Sheila, Bao's daughter, had a dream the day of, I think, Ian's death. And a telegram didn't go to India till a day or so after. So she had a dream before anyone in India was notified. And in her dream, Ian says to her, I want to be born in this family. I want to be part of your family. And she says, we're not having any more children, so you can't, something like that. And then she said to Bao, Ian must have passed away, even though that, as I say, the notice hadn't gone out. Now she knew Ian because David and Sheila had stayed with us a couple of times in New Jersey when they had come. So she knew Ian from previous years. Well, that was a kind of interesting thing that she had that dream, you know, and for whatever reason. Yeah. He had tried many times to go to India, unsuccessfully. One time Brad got meningitis, as I said. Another time he was supposed to go and give a talk in Bombay, and it got cancelled, and he was going to go down to Mehera. And there was a third incident. Oh, Brad was going to private school, and we were told if we took him out of school when we wanted to go, which was, I think, for Baba's birthday, that we would lose the tuition for the year and he'd be expelled. Something along those lines, and we couldn't go. At least 3 attempts were made, and he never got there, which was interesting when he said to Sheila, I want to be born in this family, because he wanted to go and he couldn't go. So if he was born there, he would be there. So, but she said, no, no more children. Yeah.
Her kids were both born by then.
Yeah, she had the 2 boys, yeah. Oh, yeah. Jeff Wolverton had a vision of Ian, too. I'm not sure if he knew Ian had died or if it was before. But he saw him all glowing and bright and young and happy and like sparkling and like a very happy, glowing Ian, which he had actually written up and sent to me, and I didn't keep it. Unfortunately, he had a whole description of it. Wasn't a dream, it was a vision. He was cleaning the cabins. He was in one of the cabins, and all of a sudden he saw Ian. It might have even been before he died, or the day of he died. I don't remember.
It's that day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. I need to ask Jeff, but he may not remember because now we're talking 1985 and we're in 2023. That's quite a... Yeah. But Ian and Jeff really liked each other. They were very close. You know, when Bao came to visit us that August, just before Ian died, they really bonded. You know, they had never met before, but Ian really liked Bao. He just like fell in love with him, and they really had a connection, you know. Oh, and you know, what did Ian say to Bao? I'm fed up. I'm fed up with this commute back and forth to New York. I wish I could just end it all, but I have children and responsibilities, something like that. And Bao said, don't worry, if anything happens, Baba will take care of your children. Something along those lines, but I don't remember it clearly, so it was a long time ago. But it was like a funny thing for Ian to say, because he had never complained to me. I mean, it was a stinky commute, but I never knew he was so fed up with that commute. When we went to Jerry Edwards' retirement party up in wherever it was, up North Jersey, could be, yeah. He was retiring from he was 65, I guess, and he was retiring. He worked for the government, maybe? He was a physicist. So I went to that retirement party with Jeff White. And but all the people there were people from his work that we didn't know. So it wasn't interesting for us. So Jeff said, let's go to the Ramada. Phil Ludwig is playing, his band is playing there, and let's go there, because it was in the same town or close by. So that we went over there, and Jeff and I were sitting at a table. Phil was on stage with his band, and I didn't even know what instrument he played, even though he had been coming down regularly with, remember, he would come down, drive down from Palisades Park, and we would have a pizza, and he would bring these spiritual videos, which Sammy thought was the stupidest thing she ever heard, because she was invited to join us. No way was she going to sit around and watch. Pizza was good, but the videos, because she was all of 14 maybe, or 15 then. Anyway, so he had been coming down for a while, and remember Maruk told me off that she said, it's not nice what you're doing, you're encouraging him, you're not really interested in him, he's not your type, and you agree he's not your type, and so why are you leading him on, and it's not nice. She told me that. And I said to her, well, I'll tell him next time. She said, yeah, you tell him when he comes down that, you know, you're not really romantically interested in him, and I promised her I would tell him that. So from the time she said that to the next time was this affair where we went to Jerry Edwards. And so we went to the Ramada, and I didn't even know, I mean, all these, it had been going on like he'd been coming down for maybe a couple of months. I didn't know that he played the bass. Oh, he plays the bass. I thought, well, that's interesting. And then he sang. I didn't know he could sing. Nobody knows today, but he was, I thought, a really good singer. I really liked his singing. And he imitated, his idol, Richie Havens. So he had a little bit of a gravelly voice like Richie Havens. So he was singing. Oh my God, he sings. Isn't this something? And then the band takes a break, and he puts money in the jukebox. This is how long ago it is they had jukeboxes, right? Kids don't even know what that is today. So he comes over and asks me to dance to the jukebox music. So I get up to dance. Phil can't dance for beans. But that night, he was like Fred Astaire. He was like the best dancer you could ever imagine. And he smelled patchouli oil. And I didn't know what it was. I had never smelled it before, but I loved it. I thought, oh. And then all of a sudden, Baba passed his hand over our heads. I thought to myself, he smells good. He dances good, he sings good, he's single, he's a Baba lover, he doesn't have any children or encumbrances. What is the matter with you? And he became like this whole new, interesting, wonderful person. It just happened that quickly, really. I really didn't have much interest, it's true. And Maruk was right to say that to me. And you might have said something too. I seem to remember you made some remark that wasn't nice of me, what I was doing. Something you did say, because you knew he was coming down from Palisades Park, which was like an hour drive, right? On a regular basis he was coming. So then the funny thing was, the next time I saw Maruk, she said, well, did you tell him? And I burst out laughing, and she started to laugh too. She said, oh, I thought that one might happen. She said, I didn't say anything, but I thought you might fall for him. So, but she was, she was happy to hear that. Because they liked him, but they didn't want me to be mean to him, kind of, and make a fool of him. So that was the turning point. I mean, he obviously liked me, wouldn't have been coming down, wasting his time too. So it's thanks to Jerry Edwards that happened. If Jerry had had more interesting guests at his party, we would have stayed. But
And then I get such a kick out of the wedding where Bao was and Charles officiated.
And John Connor.
And you had the painting.
Yes. And you know, his family said the Indian Mafia was there because Bao and John were in sunglasses sitting in the front row. This is inside in the church. So they said, oh, the Indian Mafia came to their wedding, which is really funny. John's not Indian, but...
The people who didn't know him said, why would the groom have a painting of himself on the altar?
I know, that's true.
He looks a lot like that picture.
He did at that time, yeah. They must have been maybe the same age when Bob was in the picture. Phil was about, well, was he 40? He wasn't even 40. I don't know. But yeah, they did say that. Why does he have a picture of himself?
So can we ask him?
You know, I'm still interested in reading the books and that, but not the way I used to gobble them up, that I couldn't wait for the next book to come out. And I'm interested, you know, when Ward's talks and all the kind of intellectual stuff, as they call it, although it's not, and the scientific stuff when Baba talks about the universe and planets. But much less so than before. Now I'm more interested in just talking to Baba and seeing how he's orchestrating everything and planning our lives, you know, and looking back how he was there and we made good decisions, and without kind of knowing, he must have been steering us. Like simple things like the piano, that was such a big deal, turned out to be the right thing. Well, somebody pushed the weight on one side that we did that, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I just see Baba more in our lives, and it's less mind, hopefully more heart with Baba, I think. And these stories, as you say, are so inspiring, and they're all different, but they're all for the particular person. You know, these little miracle things that happened to Ian, that was the very thing he needed, because his scientific mind was jolted by how it could be that after he had been trying for 9 months, actually, to place his mother, the very next morning after he does this Baba thing, imploring Baba, there's the perfect spot. You know, he couldn't do it for 9 months. Baba could do it in 1 day, or less than a day. And that he couldn't explain these things. There is no explanation. So that's the way Baba got him.
Let's say, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Yeah, that's enough talking. Huh?